The Day After program will consider 5 global challenges that COVID-19 has brought to the forefront of public debate. Inspired by classic and contemporary films, along with the reflections of leading public intellectuals, we will discuss and experiment with alternative narratives that might help us as we look ahead to the day after. Today, we discuss the subject of leadership in crisis with the participation of Dr. פיליפ Rosler. Dr. Rosler led efforts to expand vocational training and foster entrepreneurship, particularly in the German startup community. Your first career, פיליפ, was as a combat medic in the German armed forces, where you went on to medical school and became a physician. You have led the charity foundation, the Hainan Siang Charity, and currently you are an independent advisor and a board member. I'd also like to mention that you were born in Vietnam, adopted by German parents as a baby, now married to Dr. Wiebke Rosler, with whom you have twin daughters. Welcome and thank you for participating.
Hello.
We're talking about leadership during the COVID-19 crisis. We have countries such as Germany and Vietnam, Taiwan and New Zealand, very different countries, and they were leading the way in setting great standards. Do you see common qualities in their leadership?
Yeah, first of all, they have been very decided and they acted very fast. And second, all these countries have in common that they have relatively strong institutions. And I think you need politicians in crisis who are making very fast the needed decisions. But at the same time, you also need strong institutions in order to execute across the entire country all the decisions made.
You talk about institutions. That brings us to the question of democracy. One of the major steps in fighting COVID-19 was putting down a very strict lockdowns and limitations on people's movement, on work, on many activities. How could it be possible that even in very free democracies, very loose societies, you could implement such strict rules and measurements and have people follow them?
I think what strikes the people have been the arguments. And I think if you do see the arguments why certain measurements have put into place, I think then you will accept it. And even if you are living in a democracy, you will follow the rules because you by yourself make the decision that these are good decisions and that it's good for yourself, for your family, but also for the entire society to follow the rules. And in this case, I think it doesn't matter if it's a democracy or non-democracy, because in any case, there are certain rules in place and you have to follow. In democracy, you can argue against, you can act against the rules, but since there have been very strong arguments, I think everyone accepted the strong lockdown, at least for a couple of weeks.
So we're talking about, let's call it common sense, the fear of being infected. But let's try and realize how leadership qualities made people trust their governments. Do you see any correlation between a type of government and trust in government and the outcome during the crisis?
So there's at least no correlation between the type, means democracy or non-democracy. However, they have some things in common. I think part of good leadership is to make decisions and to make that very decisions very fast. And I think all the different countries that are doing well in the crisis made the decisions very fast, be it in Vietnam, be it in Germany or elsewhere. So it was always a question of speed. Second, I think if you have seen the pictures from Wuhan and in Europe from Italy, Bergamo, so I think then it was very striking to see all these good arguments by the certain governments to follow. And so I think this was the main line of leadership, to make a decision. Everyone accepted that these have been in this very moment the right decisions, given the news across the world. And third, so then they have been motivated, at least for a couple of weeks, to follow that very rules.
If we take, for example, countries that did not act fast, such as the United States, for example, maybe Brazil, and so on, we have a very polarizing leadership there. Do you think this is the main cause for a different outcome in this crisis?
Unfortunately, yes. So if you see now the numbers of fatalities with people, and you see what happens now in the societies in Brazil, in the US, I think that is a consequence of not optimal leadership in crisis. And again, so to some extent, if a pandemic appears, that's not a wish or not wish, or a question of, oh, do we like freedom or not freedom? So there are some strong facts we have to follow. And if there's a leadership in place which is not always following the facts, then you see a very negative outcome for society and for the entire nation.
Do you see leaders that, as you mentioned, not following the facts and so on, taking advantage of fear, of confusion, of too much information that people receive, and they cannot make up their minds what is the right things to do, what are the right things to do, taking advantage of the situation?
At the end, those kind of leaders are not leaders in reality, because they don't lead the people, they don't lead the society, but they are following its emotions. Which means society is always, if a pandemic appears, certainly everyone is worried, right? Even if you're a doctor, so you're worried too. So, and then you have emotions, oh no, it cannot be, and we don't want to have this. And so, and in this very moment, there are two ways. First, you can say, oh yes, you're right. You have totally the right emotions. Let's don't do anything, because that will happen and we will pass it and everything is fine. Or you will say, okay guys, that's a very severe situation. Let's act fast. Let's do some decisions. Let's take some decisions which are not super nice, but necessary. And I think this would be the better style of leadership, which we have seen across the world in many, many countries, but there are unfortunately some countries which prefer the first way, means to follow the emotions and not the good arguments.
This health crisis has exposed major disparities in societies around the world. Now, this has not popped up just now. Do you see that as a leadership crisis starting before the pandemic, leadership failure maybe?
To some extent, yes, because in those countries which have this questionable style of leadership, we had the discussions about this style of leadership even before the pandemic. And again, so one character of this style was not to lead the people, but to follow the emotions of the society, the mindset or the assumed mindset of the society. But it's not leadership. It's more that you as a leader, you are following rather than leading your country. And this was even before the pandemic. And unfortunately, the pandemic has maybe surfaced the challenges that are always together with this not optimal style of leadership.
Do you see any correlation between the outcome and the handling of the pandemic and, let's call it, in the more egalitarian societies, such as in Northern Europe or Germany? Have they led in a better way during this crisis, and will they be able to lead better after the crisis?
Well, I think, so if you see, for example, so there's a huge difference between Sweden on the one hand and even the neighbor countries in the Nordics, like Finland and others. So they've been very strict, whereas Sweden was not at all that strict. And so I think the outcome really is not depending on the kind of society, but more the kind of leadership first. And second, again, the question of institutions. And so there have been across the world, even across the European Union, different leadership styles. And I think that's what we can see, that those who have taken these decisions are more successful than others. And by the way, these measurements are not in favor of an egalitarian system, but they're very public oriented and more top-down rather than bottom-up democracy styles.
So basically, what you're saying is that decisive action, fact-based decision-making were crucial for good leadership during this crisis. But on the other hand, we have, as you mentioned, emotional, let's call it emotional leadership. My question is, do you think that those polarizing leaders and characters, do they leverage the emotions and they actually act in rational and fact-based understanding to get to another goal that maybe is not in the best public interest? And maybe we'll have a society such as China with an authoritarian leadership that has taken very quick steps, very decisive, very scientific based. As you mentioned at the beginning, this is not about what kind of regime, but the way the regime has acted during the crisis. But let's talk beyond the crisis. Again, what will be the major qualities and characteristics that would take the world a step forward? We're talking about a very, very big financial and economical crisis stemming from the pandemic. What would be the most important qualities to bring us to the next level, to take us out of this abyss?
Again, so to come out of any kind of crisis, you always need good leadership. And leadership means how to come to decision and how to turn the decision into reality. And for the last step, to turn the decision into reality, you need strong institutions. That explains why many countries with the right decision made are that successful, because they have at the same time quite strong institutions to execute the decision made. But the decision, this is a quite important question, what we discussed even before. So there are two styles of finding the right decision. The first is to listen to the arguments, to listen to the experts, to listen to the scientists, then to think through the arguments, and then to make your own decision. Others are following not the arguments of scientists or good advisors, they are following people's emotions, which is totally understandably that there are emotions. Again, as a human being, we all have emotions if something appears like a pandemic, but they are listening to them and they are only making decision in favor of the emotions. Mm-hmm. And again, that's not leadership, it's more the other way around, because they are following the emotions rather than leading. And leading means to make a decision and to find the majority for these right decisions, to turn the decision into reality. And again, to come out of the crisis, we do need this kind of leadership. Listen to the arguments, listen to the advisors, making your own decision, and then turn the decisions into reality.
In your career in government, could you tell us maybe about an example for the way right leadership decision-making was taken and implemented? Do you have like a story that you know personally?
Yeah, so during my time as a vice chancellor, I was Minister of Economic and Technology, and it was in the years where we have the so-called Eurozone crisis. Talk about Greece and Italy to some extent, and it's always a question of leadership to put in place some major decisions, and certainly there are pros and cons. Some arguments have been we have to follow strict economic rules to come out of an economic crisis, which makes sense. But at the same time, these strict economic rules are quite often against the thinking and the wishes of the people. For example, if you cut pensions or salaries or whatever. And so, but you have to make this decision to to lead a society, or in this case, even the European Union, the Eurozone, out of the crisis. And so our government has had to make some very unpopular decisions, but these decisions have been based on facts and arguments. And thanks God we could, take the decisions and we could survive the Eurozone crisis. But it was one of the most challenging time in my life, because you have to convince your party, the parliament, your colleagues, the government, and the entire society. So it sounds easy to make a decision and to turn the decision into reality, but in reality, it's a little bit more. It's not trivial.
That sounds a lot like blood, sweat, and tears. And I don't think there are many leaders today, maybe except for countries like Germany, that can actually have the conviction and courage to say, I can promise you only blood, sweat, and tears and hard work, but we're going to be okay in the longer term. Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I would agree. But again, so it's easy to say that, but if you in this moment to say to the people, hey, now we are facing very difficult times, it's quite challenging, to really convince the people to follow then the measurements and the rules. Mm-hmm. So, and across the world, we have seen it the last weeks and months, that it was the most challenging part to explain to the people, oh no, you have to stay at home, because otherwise we won't survive as a global society this pandemic. But quite many governments could achieve this kind of conviction in society. So that is an achievement. And again, it's independent from the type of democracy or state governance. And yeah, it's the most challenging part is not to make only a decision and the right decision, but really to motivate people to turn the decision into reality. That's real leadership.
I'd like to ask you about personal leadership. Since your life, you've gone through many careers and changes. About personal leadership skills and qualities. How do you apply them in your own life and work? What should people in all walks of life look for in leading themselves and their families in such precarious times?
And it's always at least a three-step process. First is, again, to listen to the arguments, to try to see and understand and figure out the facts. Then second, to make a decision and to be bold to make a decision. Because quite often you're not that sure, and then you try to postpone the moment of making a decision. So, but take the decision. Even if it's a wrong decision, it's better to have a decision and then to correct the decision rather than to wait until more worse things will happen. And the third thing is, after you have made the decision, hopefully based on the arguments and facts and advisors' advice decision, again, motivate yourself, your family, the people around you, even society, your country, whatever, to turn these decision into reality. And I think these are the three major points of leadership. Mm-hmm. To follow facts, good arguments, to have the right wisdom to make the right decision, to be bold to make a decision. Quite often people tend to postpone these kind of process. And third, to motivate people. And motivate people is always a question of trust. Mm-hmm. If the people are trusting you that you are a good leader, then it's way easier to turn decisions into reality, rather than, everyone is doubting if you are smart enough to make the right decision. I would bet you won't get any decisions through.
Women leaders in Nordic countries and New Zealand and Germany received praise for their leadership during the COVID crisis. Would you say it's incidental, or are there any certain qualities that made them stand out?
Now, I would say maybe there is a correlation, because maybe, I'm a female leader, so it's not on me to judge this, but they have a sort of different style of leadership, which comes closer to the leadership I just described, to listen to others, to make a decision, and to motivate people, because people trusting them. But there are many other countries, like you mentioned Vietnam, for example, and they did very well. They have 97 million people, but only 300 cases. So, and they have, you know, the more socialist republic and the male prime minister. But I think there is a correlation. Maybe it's not super obvious, and it's not only the question of gender, but it's more a correlation in the leadership style, which is quite often affiliated to a certain type of human being. Let me say this word, of character. So, and if you have this kind of character, then it's good leadership. And maybe it's more among the female leadership, but I'm again. So I think it's good to mention that they have been good leaders in New Zealand, in Germany, the persons itself, and I think that's the most important stuff.
Thank you very much, Dr. Philip Rosler, and good luck to us all.
Thank you.
Today we discuss the subject of leadership in crises with ניירי, the founding dean of the Blavatnik School of Government and professor of global economic governance at the University of Oxford. Welcome, Professor. So you have a Maori name. You were born in New Zealand.
Yes, absolutely. I'm born and raised in New Zealand, but I've made my career here in the United Kingdom at Oxford University.
I have to ask, today I read that New Zealand's government will consider a move to lift all COVID-19 restrictions except border controls after the Prime Minister, Jesindra Ardern, said an early lockdown of the country was on track to eliminate the virus ahead of schedule. Now, what makes New Zealand such a success?
Yeah, they've done a great job. I mean, the Prime Minister moved, as she put it, early, hard and fast against the virus, and with a lot of public trust. And I think the clear communication from the top was a really important part of New Zealand's success. You know, it's extraordinary, somebody calling family in New Zealand, to hear them, everybody knows exactly what level the country is on, and they know exactly what that means. That's really good if you're trying to get the public to behave in a particular way.
So now the New Zealand Prime Minister is well celebrated around the world. I would like to ask, when we talk about leadership in crises, there are two ways to read it. One is how to lead during a time of a health and economic crisis. Who does it well, who does it not so well. And the other, maybe less benign angle, is crisis in leadership, the crisis that we see in global leadership around the world, of trust between people and their leaders, between countries, inside countries, even between local and state and national governments. So which would you say is setting the tone right now, and how do you see the trend playing out?
I think the first really surprising thing about this crisis is that lots of governments that you might have expected to respond extremely well in countries like the United Kingdom and the United States that have a lot of scientists, they've got lots of capacity, they've got good hospitals, they've got a good system. And furthermore, only 1 year ago, they gave themselves top grades on pandemic preparedness in a global measuring exercise. So you would have expected them to do very well. You would have expected countries that are very poor, very indebted, with political crises, with a lack of trust in the government, to have done badly. And yet it's been the opposite. A country like Greece in Europe, which has perhaps one of Europe's most precarious governments, highly indebted, a decade of crisis, serious public trust problems, and that government's done extraordinarily well. It moved quickly and it moved with humility. And my lesson, when I look across the world and we track government responses from the Blavatnik School of Government, I see that many of the governments that have done the best, the government of the southernmost region of Brazil, they had the humility to say, we can't deal with a full load of this crisis. So we have to act early, and we have to act preemptively, and we have to act in a way which is going to least long lock down our population. And those countries have done better. They've built a fence at the top of the cliff instead of saying, let's just build hospitals at the bottom of the cliff and try to treat everybody when they actually get sick.
So decisiveness and quick response. And also you mentioned humility. That's an interesting thought, seeing as I mentioned, let's call it a leadership crisis. We don't see many leaders displaying humility. right now?
I think that's what you described as the crisis in leadership. And humility isn't saying I don't know. Humility is knowing what you don't know and opening up to those who do, whether they're your political enemies or your political friends. It's having the open-mindedness to say, here are the people I need at this table, and I'm willing to work with them, not just to listen to them and then tell them to go away, but to work with them to ensure that we get this right. That's been the hallmark of governments that have done really well in this crisis.
I see. I would like to come back to some of the qualities that you just mentioned, but I'll ask first. Global leadership balance was changing even before the pandemic. We talk about the balance shifting from the US and the Europe to Asia. Do you see it accelerating following the pandemic and the changes that it has brought?
Yes, I do. I mean, going into this crisis, the United States and China had clearly defined themselves as being strategic rivals. And there was already a lot of conflict starting to build in that relationship. What we're seeing now is those two countries up the antagonism of that relationship. And that is really dangerous for the world at this point. It's one thing for them to be strategic rivals and to compete for the attention of all other countries, whether it's Israel or New Zealand or the United Kingdom. But it's a different thing if they are such enemies that they do not cooperate when the world absolutely needs them to. And the world needs them to cooperate on two things. One is on global health, so that countries share research, share, information, share vaccines, share the delivery of things that every country needs to fight this virus. And second, cooperation to ensure that countries can grow out of the crisis. And that's going to take genuine international cooperation, where countries come together and make it possible for every country to grow.
So that brings us to another question. First of all, we have seen that China cooperated and sent out equipment and materials once they were, let's say, out of the woods. And that is one question that, many countries ask themselves now. The United States has been this pillar of wisdom and strength for many generations, and now they barely manage to their own crisis, while China moved very quickly and managed to maybe help other countries or cooperate more openly, which is, it's supposed to be counterintuitive, but they have displayed a soft power in a way that the United States has been known to do before. The other part of the question is international cooperation. You're talking about it. It's critical. You have written about the importance of international cooperation, but for the past 4 years, we have not seen much of it. We've seen many multilateral institutions and agreements being attacked and weakened, especially on behalf of the American administration.
I think that's all right, and I think it's helpful to understand what it is that the United States and China are competing with each other for. And for me, they're competing for control and dominance over three things. The first is over markets and access to markets, where the United States has traditionally used soft power to encourage people to be on the United States side, and we're seeing China learn from that and do the same. The second is a competition for control over technology and its future. And there we've seen quite alarming decoupling of the United States and China, accelerated by President Trump's moves to break off the technology relationship, which has kept the United States and China bound together. And the third is the competition for who sets the rules of the game, where China has spent the last decade really increasing its role in international organizations and increasing its willingness to kind of lead on international cooperation issues, obviously for its own interests and goals. And the United States over that period has been stepping back from that role. So now they can be rivals on those three things, and still cooperate. We saw that even during the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States. You can be strategic rivals, but you can still find a space to cooperate. And that's going to be what's important. Can the two actually find a space to cooperate, particularly for the rest of the world? That's crucial.
If we assume that the balance will shift towards China, and China will play more of the role that the United States has before, countries should, other countries and other leaders should adapt to a different style of leadership, because China is authoritarian while the United States is still a democracy.
That's not so clear to me, because China has not tended in the past to try to get countries to adopt its political system. It has required countries to stand in line with it on issues that are international, but it hasn't tried to go inside countries and change their political system. And I think that when it comes to President Trump's presidency, it strikes me that they're not trying to change China. They're not trying to change any country from the inside. The whole point of America First is that they're trying to change America, but not change other countries in the world. So I think the choice for other countries is not which political system do we want to be forced to adopt, but rather which sphere of influence do we want to play in. And so in one scenario, this is going to be a really hard choice for countries like Israel or New Zealand or the United Kingdom. If they are forced to choose either to go with China or the United States, it's going to be at huge cost to any of those countries. Mm-hmm. The better scenario is where they can choose to play with both, to perhaps have Huawei delivering some of their infrastructure and to have deep trade relations with the United States. Mm-hmm. That's what I think is now in play. And I think if President Trump wins November's election in the United States, we are probably going to see a greater decoupling and antagonism. And that, for every other country in the system, is going to mean that there's some very hard choices ahead.
In an article you published recently, you wrote, the golden rule in fighting pandemics is to encourage affected countries to notify others immediately of any infection. Now, I asked you about transparency. Is that crucial in leadership? Does it have any drawbacks?
If a virus does have an outbreak in a country, and don't forget, coronavirus is not the last virus the world is going to face. There will be another virus in the next few years. And the world relies on the country in which the virus emerges, telling other countries that there's a problem so that other countries can begin to take preventative measures. That's absolutely crucial for global health. Now, to do that, the world has cleverly constructed an international organization, the World Health Organization, and a treaty which underpins it, the international health regulations, which require every country in the world to notify the World Health Organization so that it can notify others and ensure a cooperative solution. And there's a quid pro quo in that. If you notify the WHO, what they promise to do for you is not to immediately ban all travel, tourism, and trade with your country, because if they did that, no country would ever notify. So it's a minimum trust that's required to make the system work, where everybody trusts the international organization just enough to share information with them so that everybody benefits from that kind of collective information and pooling of information. The system breaks down when countries don't play the game. The system breaks down when countries refuse to play the game. And, you know, it's happened in the past. A decade ago, Indonesia declared that it would stop sharing virus samples with the World Health Organization because it did not trust what the organization was doing with them. But everybody came back to the negotiating table, organized, you know, a set of procedures that Indonesia could trust, and the World Health Organization continued on foot. President Trump has said that he's going to withdraw funding from the organization. My hope is that the United States will quite quickly realize that the health of the United States depends as much as everybody else on this planet in this cooperative arrangement, and that they will find a way back into this cooperative set of relations.
notifying other countries, as you mentioned, is very important. I think I've spoken last week with a very prominent Italian doctor, and he said that they acted very quickly once they realized they have a cluster, the first cluster. But then again, he said that he and any other doctor and any other official in the world actually did not believe that this is what happened in China is going to happen in their own country. It was so far-fetched for them. So maybe this is one of the roles of leadership, to say, okay, you have the facts. I don't care if you believe it's going to happen here or not. I have to act according to probabilities. Would you say that fact-based and scientific-based considerations are crucial in handling such a crisis, basically a physical crisis, is that the actual factor that differentiated between countries that acted quickly and succeeded and others?
Of course, when you get a group of human beings in the room, what you don't get is an objective assessment of the facts. You get an objective assessment of the facts with a whole lot of psychological baggage alongside it. And what is a trademark of crises, whether they're financial crises or pandemic crises, is that a group of people, particularly if they're similarly educated and quite similar, if you've got no diversity around the table, are very prone to encouraging each other to believe that the worst thing will not happen. It's called groupthink. And that we've seen in this crisis, where good leaders were prepared to say, what's the worst thing that could happen? And how do we avoid that worst thing? And bad leaders fell into groupthink and saying, you know what, it probably won't happen, so let's not think about that. Or it is so awful what could happen that it's unthinkable, and therefore we don't want to think about it, and so we'll just assume it won't happen.
In 2008, we had a lot of movement here in Israel, the tent movement and the Occupy Wall Street and Occupy many cities around the world. Do you think that the continuing revolt, the Corona revolt maybe, the racial tension in the United States would bear a new kind of leadership that is not, as you mentioned, the elites, the Davos elite, that has led the way for maybe decades or so? Do you see something new coming out and building for the next generation?
Look, I think it's different in every country. I don't think there is one thing that's going to emerge. You know, what I do think is that in one of the pragmatic things governments are going to have to do is restart their economies, resuscitate their economies. And then the question is, how do you best do that? It turns out that the best way to resuscitate an economy is not just to channel money to the wealthiest people in the economy, because they don't tend to spend it on consumer goods, and they spend a small proportion of their income. So the best way to resuscitate an economy is actually to do emergency support for the bottom 50% of your population, because they will spend 100% of what you give them. And therefore it has a very powerful, as economists would call it, multiplier effect. So for quite pragmatic economic reasons, we might find that governments, whatever their ideology and color might be, might find themselves, you know, doing what would be the right thing to rebuild public trust. I think the governments that are going to do, or are going to have the hardest time, are the governments that decide that this is the moment to ratchet up austerity, that because they've gone into debt during COVID, and because their businesses are in debt because of COVID, that this is the time to cut the easiest things that it is for a government to cut, and that's usually benefits to the poorest. Mm-hmm. And the governments that cut that, I think, are going to find themselves with a really deepened deficit of public trust, because it will look like a replay of what people suspected a decade ago after the financial crisis.
One last question, something maybe closer to home for you. How did the crisis affect the work in the School of Government, in universities? How did it affect your students from abroad?
Well, yeah, it's been a big change. The Blavatnik School of Government, we bring students from 60 or 70 different countries around the world to study with us, and they get to know each other and they learn how to learn from each other, which is exactly what's needed in this crisis. We need governments to look at governments that are working and to learn from them. Now, the travel restrictions mean that all of our students are sitting in their own countries or in their own rooms, and they're interacting like you and I are interacting now. And in that, we've found a wonderful opportunity, which is that we can reach people and bring them into conversations in much more adept ways and with much greater speed and less expense. So for us, I think at the Blavatnik School at Oxford, we're thinking first, the fact that countries are turning in and becoming more nationalistic and people are less able to travel means we have to double down and work even harder to ensure that people from different countries get to know each other and get to learn from each other and learn that when they lead their communities, they can rely on their neighbors and on other countries. So that's a first lesson. And the second lesson is that all this virtual technology can be used in a very personalized way, in a very educative, learning and collaborative way to help us to do that at greater scale all over the world. So that's the positive side of this crisis.
Thank you very much. It has been very interesting.
Thank you.
I wish all of us luck.
Yes, and good luck to you and to all of your communities.
אז שלום, במסגרת התוכנית שלנו היום שאחרי, שבה אנחנו משוחחים שיחות מרתקות ומראים סרטים מעולים, אנחנו גם נשוחח עם עורך הארץ אלוף בן על מנהיגות ומה קורה במפה העולמית. אז שלום אלוף ותודה.
שלום נטע.
אז ככה זה התחיל שעצרנו את התוכנית הזאת וחשבנו מי יהיה מעניין שאתה תראיין, ופתאום נפל האסימון שהכי מעניין פשוט לראיין אותך, עם הידע שלך ויכולת הניתוח והראייה הגלובלית. והייתי שמחה אם נתחיל באיזה ראיית מקרו על איך מפת העולם השתנתה בדיוק, הכוחות השונים, כי ברור עכשיו שארצות הברית דאון ואולי כוחות אחרים אפ.
אני חושב שהשינוי הבולט ביותר זה שזה, נגיד, ההכרה בכוח של סין. זה לא שסין התחזקה ממקום שהייתה למקום אחר. אני חושב שיש הכרה הרבה יותר גדולה בכוח שלה כמעצמה השנייה, כמעצמה שמתחרה בארצות הברית. כמעצמה שגם מציעה איזשהו סיפור אחר.
היא יצאה מזה כמעט ללא פגע, זה מדהים, כמי שחוללה את המגפה הזאת.
טוב, לא, היא לא חוללה את המגפה בכוונה, זה קצת הגדרה לא ראויה, אני חושב, כי...
שהמגפה התחוללה.
נפלה למגפה, והם בהתחלה מרחו את זה, ודחו את זה, אבל אחר כך באמת התייחסו לזה באגרסיביות האופיינית לסין. וכרגע, לפחות לפי מה שנראה, מוקד המשבר העולמי עבר משם לארצות הברית. כן. שלא הצליחה להתמודד עם זה, נכון? ולא גילתה מנהיגות מספיקה, וזה הוביל אחר כך להתפרצות של מתחים חברתיים בתוך ארצות הברית. בשעה שסין ניצלה את זה הפוך, ניצלה את זה כדי להעמיק את ההשתלטות על הונג קונג. ובעצם לעשות עוד צעד בעיון ההסכם עם בריטניה שהעניק להונג קונג, איזו מידה של חופש ודמוקרטיה וחופש ביטוי, שלא היו קיימים בסין גופה.
כן, אבל עדיין התחושה היא שזה נענה, סיפוח של הונג קונג, נאמר את זה ככה, לפחות מבחינה חוקית, נענה בכל ענות חלושה ברחבי העולם.
מה העולם יכול לעשות?
לא הרבה, כי גם כולם מתמודדים עם הצרות שלהם מבית כרגע.
כן, תראו, גם לסין יש בעיה, עם כלכלות המערב, שהן שווקי הייצוא שלה בבעיה, אז זה בעיה גם לסין. היא לא יכולה, אין לה למי למכור. כן. ואם חברות אמריקאיות יצאו מסין, או אמריקה תנסה להגביל את סין בכל מיני שווקים כפי שהיא עושה בישראל, זה גם לא יעזור להם. אבל אין ספק שאנחנו רואים היום את סין בתור כוח עולה, ובתור כוח שמציב איזושהי אלטרנטיבה לארצות הברית. שוב, אני עוד לא רואה את ארצות הברית שוקעת. ארצות הברית עברה משברים כאלה בעבר, גם סין. בשנות ה-60, אחר כך בשנות ה-80, אחר כך אחרי פיגועי 9/11, אמריקה לא מתמוטטת כל כך מהר. עדיין ארצות הברית היא המוקד של רוב המחקר המדעי והפיתוח הטכנולוגי בעולם. היא עדיין למרות כל הבעיות, מדינה שמושכת מהגרים, הרבה יותר מסין או מרוסיה או מעצמות שרוצות להיות מעצמות אחרות. ואני לא כל כך רואה לה תחליף בעתיד הנראה לעין. למרות כל הבעיות שמייצרת מנהיגותו, או חוסר מנהיגותו של טראמפ. הרי אדם שאחרי שנבחר, חשבו שהטוויטר שלו יתורגם למעשים, ואז היו גם אצלנו אנשים שהזהירו ממלחמה גרעינית, מכל מיני התפרצויות אגרסיה אמריקאיות, וקרה בדיוק הפוך. היום באים אליו בטענות על חוסר פעילות, על חוסר תפקוד, על איך שלא התמודד מול הקורונה, שזרק את זה על מושלי המדינות.
אבל יש שם גם משבר כלכלי, גם משבר מנהיגותי, וגם ברור שהשיטה האמריקאית היא לא כל כך טובה להתמודדות עם נניח משבר בריאותי. זאת אומרת, שכל הביטוחי בריאות הפרטיים, זה לא נותן מענה.
אבל עדיין לא מצאתי הסבר לשאלה למה בניו יורק חלו כל כך הרבה אנשים בקורונה, ומתו כל כך הרבה אנשים מקורונה. זה השיא העולמי, ובהרבה מאוד ערים אחרות בארצות הברית, שגם בהן אין מערכת בריאות ציבורית, כמו באירופה או בקנדה, זה לא קרה. מצד שני, באיטליה ובספרד שיש מערכת בריאות ציבורית, ובצרפת ובריטניה קרתה הקורונה. אני לא ראיתי, אני בעיקר ראיתי בכל הדיון על העולם והיום שאחרי, ראיתי דבר כזה, אנשים אומרים, טוב, העולם לא יכול להישאר אותו דבר אחרי מגפה כזאת, חייב להיות שינוי. איזה שינוי יהיה? השינוי שהטפתי לו לפני המגפה ולא הקשבתם לי. עכשיו, אם זה לא שינה את עמדות הכותבת או הכותב, למה שזה ישנה את העולם? כן. כלומר, אני לא ראיתי שבאמריקה קמה תנועה שאמרה, בואו נעשה ביטוח בריאות ציבורי, כמו בקנדה או באירופה. הרי באמריקה יש מערכת בריאות מאוד טובה למי שיכול לשלם, או שהעבודה שלו משלמת. אפשר לטעון שהמחלה פגעה בעיקר בעניים, משום שהם לא יכולים להגיע למערכת בריאות הזאת.
וגם בהתחלה הם לא יכלו לגשת לבדיקות בכלל.
הבליט את הפערים החברתיים באמריקה.
מה לגבי אירופה? זה מעניין, גם היא, זאת אומרת, מצד אחד המדינות כן הצליחו להשתלט שם חלקן, נניח לא איטליה, וספרד, אבל כן הצליחו להשתלט. מצד שני, האיחוד האירופי גם ככה היה באיזו מגמת ירידה.
האיחוד האירופי במגמת שקיעה כבר כמה שנים. כן. קודם כל הוא איבד את בריטניה. שהיא בכל זאת אחת המדינות הכלכלות הגדולות בעולם, ומדינה מושכת מהגרים, ומדינה שמדברת אנגלית, שזה יתרון בעולם הידע וכלכלת הידע, וכך הלאה. הוא איבד אותה. והוא לא מצא לה תחליף. כן. הוא גם לא עשה מאמץ יותר מדי להשאיר אותה בתוכו. אחר כך יש לנו את חילוקי הדעות הפנימיים בתוך האיחוד. אם גוף שבעבר כפה דמוקרטיה על מדינות שרצו להתקבל, זה התחיל בכפייה דמוקרטיה על יוון אחרי משטר הקולונלים, על ספרד אחרי פרנקו, על פורטוגל אחרי סלזר ויורשיו. אנחנו רואים היום את האיחוד האירופי חי עם שחיקת הדמוקרטיה בהונגריה ופולין, כן. ולא עושה באמת מאמצים לשנות את זה. כן. לכאורה, נכון שזה לא, כמו שהיה בימי מסך הברזל, כל הונגריה או הונגרי שלא מוצא חן ביניהם ויקטור אורבן יכול לקחת את האוטו ולנסוע לאוסטריה או למקום אחר ולעבור לגור שם עם הדרכון האירופי. אבל האיחוד כאיחוד לא עושה מאמצים להתערב במשטר הפנימי של חברותיו, כי יותר חשוב לו שהן יהיו ביחד. אנחנו רואים את זה גם במדינות כלפי ישראל, שמי שחושב להטיל סנקציות או לאיים על ישראל שלא תעשה סיפוח בגדה המערבית, יודע שהאיחוד האירופי כאיחוד לא יתמוך בזה. והכוח של מדיניות האיחוד תמיד היה בה להגיד, אוקיי, כשאנחנו הולכים ביחד לדברים שאחרים לא אוהבים, אז אנחנו זורקים את זה על בריסל. כי אז אנחנו בכוח של 28 מדינות, או היום 27.
לפעמים זה נראה כאילו זה ממש עומד ותלוי רק על אנגלה מרקל, וברגע שהיא כבר עוד מעט לא תהיה, במפה הפוליטית הכל שם יקרוס.
קשה לדעת.
מי ימשיך אותה? מקרון? לא בדיוק.
כהנהגת אירופה, קודם כל יכול להיות מי שיחליף אותה בגרמניה.
נכון.
גרמניה תישאר המדינה המובילה באיחוד, מתוקף זה שיש לה את הכלכלה הכי חזקה, מתוקף הגיאוגרפיה שלה. אבל גם הכלכלה הגרמנית נפגעה אחרי שנים ארוכות של צמיחה, שבה כל חסידי אמרו, הייצור, הנה הם לא העבירו את הייצור לסין, הם מייצרים. מוצר הייצור הכי גדול של גרמניה זה מכוניות. טוב, לא בדיוק להיט עכשיו. אז גם שם יש בעיה. אין מישהו שלא נפגע מזה.
כן, לא, זה ממש גורף, זה עניין. איך רוסיה בכל העניין? זה מדינה עם אפס שקיפות והכחשת קורונה נרחבת?
שוב, אני חושב שרוסיה בבעיה בגלל שמחירי הנפט ירדו. מחירי הנפט הם בדרך כלל האינדיקציה כמעט המוחלטת לעוצמתה של רוסיה. יש גרף שמראה את התפתחות מחירי הנפט בהיסטוריה, ורואים שבשנות ה-80, כשהמחיר יורד כמעט לכלום, ברית המועצות מתפרקת. הם לא הצליחו לבנות כלכלה חלופית. הם כן הצליחו בשנים האחרונות להקרין כוח החוצה במאמץ מאוד מאוד קטן. בעיקר בסוריה. במידה מסוימת הם מעורבים בלוב, ובוודאי הצליחו לבלום את תהליך הזליגה של מדינות נוספות מברית המועצות לשעבר לכיוון נאט"ו והאיחוד האירופי, והצליחו להשתלט על חלקים מאוקראינה.
בהצלחה.
בהצלחה, שוב, הסנקציות שהוטלו עליהם לא באמת הרשימו אותם במיוחד. אבל האמת שבסוף אי אפשר להטיל סנקציות על מעצמות כאלה גדולות. גם על סין הטילו אחרי תיאנאנמן, וגם על הודו הטילו ופקיסטן, מי זוכר את זה אחרי הניסויים הגרעיניים בסוף שנות ה-90. זה לא באמת מחזיק. אז רוסיה ישנה בתור כוח צבאי מאוד מאוד משמעותי.
שליט עשיר וחזק.
שליט חזק, ללא איום פנימי ניכר. גם היום הכי מנוסה מבין מנהיגי המעצמות. אבל אני חושב שרוסיה השלימה עם זה שהיא כבר לא באותו מקום של ארצות הברית וסין.
שהיא כאילו תמיד תהיה...
שספירת ההשפעה שלה קטנה יותר, אזורית יותר, כן, אבל שוב, כוח צבאי, כוח גרעיני בעיקר מאוד מאוד גדול, ונכונות להפעיל אותו בשביל לקדם אינטרסים בסביבה הקרובה שלה. אני מתקשה לראות היום את רוסיה מנסה להפעיל כוח רחוק מהגבול. הם הרי מחלקים את העולם ל-near abroad ו-far abroad. אז סוריה אולי אצלם זה חלק מה-near abroad, כי זה הים התיכון, זה איגוף נגד טורקיה, מדינה שיש לה סכסוכים של מאות שנים עם רוסיה. אבל אני לא חושב שרוסיה מציעה איזשהו מודל אידיאולוגי אחר. אשר סין לא בדיוק עוסקת בהפצת המהפכה, אבל היא כן באה להגיד למערב, תראו, אפשר גם להיות ריכוזיים ולא לאפשר חופש פוליטי, ולא לאפשר חופש ביטוי, ועדיין להצליח כלכלית ואסטרטגית.
ועדיין שתהיה יזמות פרטית וכו', תחת הרגולציה.
בדיוק.
כן. יש איזה כוח שהיה מעניין לעקוב אחריו בשנים הקרובות, שלדעתך יפתיע,
אני חושב שהודו מנסה ללכת בעקבות סין, גם עם מנהיג ריכוזי וחזק, שלא היה לה הרבה שנים כבר, מאז אינדירה גנדי. אבל אינני יודע אם מודי מנסה, מעבר ללהגיד, אוקיי, אנחנו פה ולא ניכנע לא נהיה וסלים של סין, אלא נשמור על מעמדנו, בעיקר דרך חיזוק הקשרים עם ארצות הברית. אבל הודו גם עדיין לא מספיק חזקה, לא כלכלית ולא צבאית ולא פנימית, כדי לייצר השפעה נרחבת מחוץ לגבולותיה.
אבל אתה אומר שזה כוח שמעניין יהיה לעקוב אחריו.
כן, עדיין מדינה, יש שם תחרות עם סין למי יש הכי הרבה תושבים, אבל אני חושב שאנחנו לא תמיד מודעים לזה שמרב האנשים בעולם הם הודים או סינים. ואנחנו במערב ובטח בישראל כמעט אדישים לזה. כן. אנחנו לא יודעים מספיק מה קורה שם.
למרות שמודי ונתניהו לכאורה חברים.
מודי ונתניהו חברים, והודו לקוחה מאוד גדולה של תעשיית הנשק הישראלית, הייתה עד הקורונה לקוחה מאוד גדולה של תיירים ישראלים. תיירים ישראלים מאוד אהבו את הודו, בכל מיני מחזורי חיים, אם זה אחרי צבא, אם זה במשבר גיל 50, אם זה במסעות יוגה. שיש פה קהילה מאוד גדולה שמחוברת להודו. לסין פחות, לסין זה יותר קהילה עסקית שחלק חיה שם. אבל אני לא רואה השפעה תרבותית או חברתית של הודו וסין על המערב ובטח לא על ישראל.
ואם נסכם, זה עוד מוקדם לדבר על שינויים, כן? אנחנו עדיין כזה ממש רק יוצאים ממשבר הקורונה, אבל אתה חושב שיהיו תמורות בכוחות העולמיים, במה שנקרא soft power ו-strong power?
אני חושב שהשאלה הגדולה למשל ביחס לסין, זה אם אחרי הונג קונג הם ילכו למאמץ יותר גדול בנושא טיוואן. כן. שטיוואן בניגוד להונג קונג מוגנת על ידי ארצות הברית, בדרך הסכמים כאלה ואחרים, גם אם זה לא נקרא הכרה פורמלית ושגרירות. וכל שנה יש בסביבות אפריל את מכירת הנשק האמריקאי לטיוואן שמעוררת את זעמם של הסינים. וצריך לראות, האם ילכו למדיניות יותר אגרסיבית גם בכיוון הזה. האספירציות שלהם ידועות, לאחד את האי עם סין, הם לא ויתרו על זה אף פעם.
טיוואן התמודדה עם המשבר בצורה מופתית, זה גם במאמר מוסגר. יש להם נסיעה מאוד מרשימה.
כן.
אז טוב, אולי גם תעמוד לנוכח סין.
גם הצליחה לעשות מעבר יותר מהרבה מדינות אחרות באסיה, מעבר מרשים לדמוקרטיה.
כן, נכון.
בדומה לדרום קוריאה אולי, שגם התמודדה נורא עם המשבר.
נכון, גם. טוב, אז אנחנו נעקוב אחרי טיוואן.
בהחלט.
תודה רבה, אלוף בן.
תודה רבה.